In a prior lesson, we discussed issuing bonds at a discount, and we accounted for them. To remind you of that scenario, Wang Inc. issued bonds worth $1 million. The bonds were for a 5-year term, 12% contract rate, and semi-annual interest payments, which meant 10 periods for those bonds. At a time when the market rate, MR, market rate, was providing 13% for the year, or 6.5% for the 6-month period. In contrast, the contract rate on these bonds is 12% for the year, or 6% for the 6-month period. Now, based on that information, we accounted for the issue, and we also accounted for the interest payment and the amortization of the bond premium, the bond discount, I'm sorry. And so we used some very simplified method called the straight line method to amortize that discount. That is not always the best way to do this. In fact, we need to use instead something like this. This is actually a different method of amortizing the discount, which is, is reflected here in this column. This method here, using this table, is called the effective interest method. And so it will do basically the same thing mechanically, but the numbers will be different because you're doing this every 6 months here. You're amortizing part of the discount in a different way than we did before. So let's do that. Let's go through the table to see how it works. Assuming that we issue the bonds on 3/31, the carrying value of the bonds is the $1 million face minus the proceeds, the price of the bonds. And that would be, in the case of these bonds, $964,056. Again, the difference between the million and this amount, the pricing, is the difference that effectively provides the investor with an additional 1%. So effectively, through this mechanism, through this discount, the investor will be able to receive 30% as opposed to the contract of 12%. In other words, the investor gets 12% through the interest payments and an additional 1% through the discount here. Now, given that this is the price, the difference between the face and the price then gives you the discount. So at the outset of the issue, the discount account balance reflects $30,944. Now, come the very first period at the end of the first 6 months, we have to figure out how much to reduce the carrying value by, which is a function of what is left in the discount account balance. So how do we do this? We also figured in the prior lesson that the interest payment on those bonds every 6 months is a factor of the 6% times the face. So 6% times $1 million provides you with the interest payment of $60,000. Now, how do we figure under this method what is the interest expense? Well, under that method, we're going to take the carrying value, meaning this prior period ending balance. In this case, is the beginning of the period because that's when we actually issued it, right? And multiply it times the market rate. And in this case, the market rate is 6.5%. So if you multiply the 6.5% times 964,056, you get a result of 62,664. That is the interest expense overall. So the difference between the interest expense and the interest payment, that is the amortization of the discount balance. So as you can see, the discount account goes from 35,944 down to 33,281, since we're reducing it by the 2,664. Having done that, then, the carrying value of the bonds after the first period, after the first 6 months, will be $1 million minus 33,281 or 966,719. The same process is followed each period. As you can see, when you get to the very end, the discount is now down to 0, and so the face amount is what is the carrying value of the bonds.